Welcome to Ditch the Nerves, the podcast where you keep calm and lead on. I am Rekha Matthew, your host for this episode. Today we have a very special guest, and he's someone who can think on his feet, literally. He is the Toastmasters District 91 Table Topics champion for 2025, and he joins us today to share how to be a quick thinker, an effective communicator, and how to stay sharp under pressure. There is so much to learn from this man. Chris Billington, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Oh, a pleasure to be part of it. Thank you for asking me.
Chris, first of all, I would love to go back to your contest experience. I was there fortunate to watch you perform and win the title of the Best Table Topics contestant. I would love to know what actually went through your mind the instant you were announced as the Table Topics contest winner.
It was a surprising situation, actually, because I was the very last speaker in the competition. So when we'd drawn lots, I happened to be given the last space. So I was out there in the lobby outside watching everyone else go in one at a time. And I was left the last person there to go in and speak. So I didn't hear anybody else speaking in that competition. And I still haven't heard them speaking because no recordings were allowed. So I went in there, I did my best, I felt it went really well, but I didn't actually have a clue how well everyone else had done. So when they were announcing the winners, it was like, well, third place is, okay, well, I'm not third. Okay, second place is, okay, well, I'm not second. Did I come first or did I just not place at all? I had no idea. And then they announced my name and it was like, yes, fantastic. I was really proud of myself.
Yeah.
But following that, there was another thing that came through my mind, which was because I talked about Kirsty, my partner, and Thea, my daughter, who was only 6 days old, actually, at the time of the competition, it meant that I could go home and I could say that they'd helped me to win the competition, which was a good thing because they'd let me come and compete, even though Thea was only 6 days old.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was amazing. And did watch when you were announced the winner, there was so much of cheering from the crowd, which only meant there was just so much supporters and everyone agreed to that sort of verdict of you being the winner. So that was really pleasant to see. You have a very calm and confident sort of way of speaking. Has this always been the way that you are naturally very calm and composed when you speak, or is it something that you had to develop over the years?
Maybe confident way of speaking. I don't know if I'm always calm when I speak. I can get quite enthusiastic as well. I guess I'll let your listeners be the judge of that for themselves. But no, of course not. I think everything to do with communication really is firmly on the nurture side rather than the nature side. None of us are born learning how to speak or even knowing any language at all. So I think for me, it was quite a learning curve, just as it is for everybody else. My story for it, though, is a little bit different because my dad, when I was a young kid, was a fundraiser for charities. And so at weekends, I'd often be going to a fundraising event that my dad would be running. And there might be somebody sitting in a bath of beans or a fun run or something. But at some point, my dad would get on a stage and he would speak to an audience of 200 people or 500 people or whatever it was. And he'd make them laugh and he'd make them give them money. And I was about a 6-7-year-old boy watching my dad doing this, assuming, well, that's what a man does. Because when you're that young, you assume that what your dad is perfect. And so when I had opportunities to speak in front of an audience, and that was an assembly at school or for scouts or something like that, I took those opportunities. And it meant that I took the opportunities, I learned from the opportunities, and I made a lot of the mistakes younger than other people do because I was trying to be like my dad. And over time, certainly with Toastmasters as well and other opportunities, it meant that I gained these skills. But they're hard won, and they're skills that we all have to put the time and effort into achieving. Nobody's born with this. We all gain it through effort.
It's amazing how you have your dad as an example to get into it. I think most of the people, when they think of table topics or impromptu speaking, they just stay away from it because it is terrifying. It is obvious that it is quite terrifying. And when you have a role model like your father who has set that example for you, and you, as you grow up, you want to resemble more like your parents, that sounds like a good start for you, at least in this journey of public speaking and impromptu speaking. So that's pretty good. Out of curiosity, did you want to be like your father in the way that he spoke, or did you want to develop your own style?
Do you know, I really respected my dad in so many ways. And so in many ways, I did want to be like my dad. Not exactly like him. I'm definitely a different person. But yeah, I did want to live up to his style there. And I think he would say potentially that I surpassed him in communication in public speaking. But I never competed with him in terms of becoming a CEO of an organization or being on the board of governors of many organizations and things like that. So there were so many things that my dad did far better than me. I just started to focus on this one niche, which was the communication side of it. So
Yeah.
I followed his example and then pushed past where he did, perhaps on that one.
Now, there is there are different skills involved when it comes to delivering a prepared speech versus delivering something that is impromptu. And table topics, for those in the audience who don't know what it is, it's basically you're given a topic to speak on the spot for 2 to 3 minutes, which you have absolutely no idea about, which you did not get any chance to prepare. And I believe it's also part of public speaking, but the skills involved in it are completely different from what you would have if you were to deliver a prepared speech. So I would love to know, Chris, what is your process when it comes to preparing for a table topics contest, given that you know that the questions are going to come out of surprise. So how do you prepare? Can you even prepare? That's the question.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe you can. And actually, part of the work that I do is I run training courses on communication and management for global organizations. That's what I do for a job. And I absolutely tell people this is something you can prepare for. And it's such an important thing in business, for example, where you might be working with a senior stakeholder or a client, and they ask you a question out of nowhere, and you have to come up with a good, credible answer that makes sense and makes people trust you. And while there is crossover between prepared speeches and impromptu, so your eye contact, your body language, your tone of voice, your ability to engage, inform and inspire an audience, these are all the same across both. But when it comes to impromptu, the thing that I find so useful is knowing that I've got a plan before I even hear the question that I'm asked. So what I teach people when I'm training this stuff actually is I tell them, you already know what your start line is going to be before you start speaking. And the start line I often teach people is the phrase, I believe that. If you know the first words you're going to say are, I believe that, you can put something after it. You don't have to have, well, I'm not sure. You go, I believe that the sky is blue. I believe that we should all drive electric cars. I believe that nobody should live in the UK. I believe that anything fits after those words, I believe that. So you don't have to worry about your start line. You've already got the first words before you even hear the question. And then I've got a process in the middle, which I must confess I stole completely from Aristotle, who came up with it over 2,000 years ago. And he talked in ancient Greek, and not that I can speak Greek, but he talked about ethos, logos, and pathos. And what I take from that is when I'm answering a question, ethos, why you should listen to me talk about this subject. Logos, why my idea makes logical sense. And then pathos, why people should care about this thing that I'm talking about. And if you do that, you simply answer those questions. Well, you should listen to me because I'm 44 years old and I've got this experience. My idea makes logical sense because 2 + 2 = 4. You should care because if you make the right decision now, it's not just going to benefit you, it's going to benefit your children and your children's children as well. So you've done ethos, logos and pathos, and at the end, you give them a call to action. So that's why we should all drive electric cars. You've got a process already before you even hear the question. So if you've got that embedded in yourself, you hear the question and you simply slot it into your process, find a way to genuinely care about it, be enthusiastic about and share a genuine story, and people seem to like it.
Amazing. I love that framework. I'm going to steal that.
Feel free.
Your improvised version. So I absolutely love that. And it also makes me wonder whether you would also sit back before the contest to run through all of the exciting experiences that you've had over so many years, ups and downs, so that you can and sort of run through that framework across those different experiences so that there is something to fall back on. Is that even like something that you would do?
Well, I'll tell you what I did on the train on the way up to London for the competition. In fact, I've even got it in front of me here. I went through, in my phone, I've got various notes pages, and I've got a notes page for stories and speech topics. That just a single line for each one. So, for example, the time that I met my best friend and he nearly killed me on the side of a mountain, for example. Right? Okay, I've got a story about that. I've got another story about a time when I was going to be beaten up by some people on a night out when I was 18 years old, and my friend stepped in, and there were 10 of them, but he stepped in to be next to me, so there were 10 of them, and now there were 2 of us. And I've got pages, I've got 100 of these things, as ideas for stories or speeches that I could give or I have given in the past. I've also got another one for quotes. I've got another one for clever rhetorical devices. I've got another one for jokes that I've heard. And I go through those, and I just have those so they're bubbling away in the back of my mind. And I wrote down some notes. I've actually got the notes here while I was on the train on the way up to London, just skimming through those notes pages. And I wrote down hope as a word. I wrote down Thea, my daughter, as a word, who I ended up speaking about. I wrote down a quote that I put here that I didn't use, but maybe I would have done. I was so bored, I'd go to the opening of a book. And I just thought, if I can find a way to shoehorn that in, I'll make people laugh, and that will help me move forward. I had another joke in there, the kind of person who'd be late for their own funeral. I just thought, if I can say phrases like this, the audience will enjoy it, and then whatever else I say is going to flow better and be more enjoyed by the audience. So I've got, I'll hold it up. I've got a random whole page of those notes that I made on the train on the way up to London that day. Just going through, condensing, thinking, I like that, that was funny, I enjoyed that. Just so they were bubbling in the back of my mind, so that maybe I could pull on them when I was asked the question, obviously not knowing what the question was going to be.
Yeah, I love that. It's almost like priming your brain for that contest, right? By bringing all of that up, making sure they are at the tip of your tongue or tip of your thoughts, and just so that it can come at the right time. So you've prepared very well, but not really prepared your speech, but prepared to deliver it really well, which is quite fantastic. I love that. I'm going to start doing some of those journaling of ideas. And you did mention, I'm just going to pick on one of those, the person who's always late to funeral. Is that ever something, is that like a fictitious idea or something that's really happened or you've observed in your real life?
No, it's a jokey idiom. It's a British jokey idiom, the kind of person who'd be late for their own funeral.
Right. Okay, cool.
And I know people like this. I know people who, if I'm organising an event, I can guarantee that they will not be there on time. They will be there 20 minutes late. And so if you're talking about somebody like that, just making a joke out of it and finding a way to make people laugh, more effective than just saying they're always late.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And now you've also shared with me previously that initially you joined Toastmasters in 2007, if I'm not wrong.
I think so, yeah.
And you took a break and now you've joined back in 2025. So that's a 15-year break. And obviously the last time I assumed you did not compete, you were just a speaker. And this time you decided to compete.
Oh, you're not quite right there. No, I did compete when I was back in the day. You know, there's a story behind that, actually. I ended up competing. I mean, I entered in all the competitions back then when I was a member. I didn't do particularly well in most of them, but I did do quite well in the humorous speaking competition. So this was when the district was actually the whole of the UK and Ireland. So it wasn't split into 71 and 91. And I ended up coming second at district in humorous speaking in 2009. To a guy called Bob Ferguson, who is a very, very good speaker and I believe still a firmly established member of the Toastmasters community in the UK. So he came first with a speech called Chips with Everything, and I came second with a speech called Confessions of a Lifeguard. See, I remember this really vividly, even though it was 2009, because it hurt so much that I came second. And you could argue that that's why I didn't renew my membership after 2010, because I was still sulking, and it took me 15 years to get over it before I came back. I'm not quite sure how true that is, but there's part of it that is true.
Well, sounds of it, you are quite competitive, and I think it requires someone who is quite competitive to go for it after, like one after the other, and just like keep going until you win it, which you have. But that sounds of it. Are you competitive yourself?
Yeah, I am competitive. I don't want to. I love competition. I like pushing myself, and I think I probably produce the best quality speeches or anything else that I do in a competitive environment. But I don't want to be competitive at the cost of damaging relationships or friendships.
Yeah,
so I'm not. I know some people get to the point where actually they can harm relationships because of competitiveness. I've got no interest in that. I want to be part of a community. I want to be friends with people around me. But I do believe that, competition takes the best out of me.
Awesome. So if you had to reflect on one habit or a mindset that helps you switch from a speaker to a winner, has there been has winning has always been at the the top of your mind when you started your Toastmasters journey, or when you started speaking, when you started Toastmasters, you were just a regular member delivering speeches, but was there like a turning point that made a change in terms of a habit or a mindset that you're going to say, yes, now I want to win and I'm going to go for it?
I first joined Toastmasters back in 2007 for the same reason as everybody else, was that I wanted to improve my ability at public speaking. And I was working for Honda at the time. I was on the graduate program at Honda UK, so I was living in Berkshire working for them. And I was doing public speaking. I was doing presentations at work. I was working in marketing, so I needed to do these things. And I was okay at them. But if I was at an event and I was speaking or doing a presentation and other people were as well, I'd be an also-ran. No one would say, oh, he was terrible, but no one was going to say that's the one to remember. And maybe that's the competitive element in me as well, that goes, no, if I'm going to speak and other people are going to be speaking, I want to be the person that people will remember. And I saw it as a way to obviously improve my career, but also there was probably a bit of ego in there as well. And I researched, how can I improve these skills? And I found Toastmasters. And I went along and I realized after a couple of meetings and doing my icebreaker speech, I am actually okay at this. I can obviously improve. I can get a lot of feedback, but this is something that comes fairly naturally to me. I just now need to learn the skills and the rules of this. And rather than it being something that I'm a bit clunky at, I want this to be something that becomes instinctive to do well. And that takes time. But I entered that and I did that. And it got to the point where people were saying, do you want to be part of the competition? I said, well, why not? And now I'm competitive and now I push forward with these things. But the mindset shift you were asking about is the one that says, rather than going, I don't want to enter the competition because I'm afraid I'll embarrass myself, it's I'm going to enter the competition because this is a learning opportunity, because under pressure we perform our best and maybe I'll learn something from that. And if I win, that's a bonus.
Absolutely. Chris, you have also in your career have held many leadership positions, as you said. You've presented at many events, and in your own personal journey of public speaking, you are training a lot of people. How do you think public speaking has, especially from Toastmasters, has impacted your leadership style when it comes to whether leading a team or whether it is interacting with senior executive members? How has it helped you? And which I'm sure it has.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that, obviously, leadership skills are a thread that runs very strongly through Toastmasters, and we take responsibility within meetings, we take responsibility for leading sections of the evening, we take responsibility for giving feedback, taking a club role. And I think that's so important to help people to gain that sense of responsibility, to make things happen and to learn to adapt in order to achieve the goals that are required. The work that I do, absolutely. So I'm delivering training courses, often with people who are very senior in global organizations. And the confidence that comes from previous experience, and including within Toastmasters, has been so useful for that. Because when I'm speaking to them, I need to come across as someone who knows what they're doing, as someone who has a clear idea that can communicate it effectively, and someone that they can trust. What we need to be able to get to that point of being that person is a safe place to practice, maybe not get it perfectly right the first time or the second time or the 20th time, but actually get to a point where we're comfortable in those leadership roles. From that, then in the real world, we're far more relaxed because we've made those mistakes and we've gained that experience in a safe environment. I think Toastmasters adds so much value by providing that environment for all of us.
And there's so much of opportunity to take those responsibilities, like for you to decide how much responsibility you want to take within Toastmasters as a leader. And there's so much of opportunity to just play around with that as well.
Absolutely.
Cool. You've obviously aced at staying calm under pressure, both because you've competed continuously over the years, as well as being able to deliver something on the spot with absolute clarity. How do you think this applies, these same skills apply to your real life career or decision making as a leader?
Well, my first thought is that I'm very, very glad that most things in life do not come with such a level of pressure of being asked a question you've never heard before in front of 150 people and expected to give a really clear answer to it off the top of your head. I'm really glad that most of life, at least for me, isn't as pressured as that. But I do apply some concepts from it. I think a concept that I transfer across is the one that I need to know what's important to my audience. Because when I'm speaking, if I'm doing impromptu speaking or a prepared presentation, it doesn't matter how good my presentation is or my speech is if it doesn't land with the audience that I'm speaking to. So the first thing I've got to know is, who are my audience? What do they care about? What matters to them? And then whatever I'm communicating, whatever I'm trying to lead in, I find a way of connecting what I'm doing or what I care about or what I'm trying to achieve with what matters to them and crossing that over. So during my table topic that won the other day, I made people laugh. In fact, one person even came and said that I made them shed a tear in a good way, during that, which was lovely as well. And I made people clap as well. Well, I didn't make them. They volunteered to clap, and that was very nice of them. But they did that because I spoke in a way that resonated with what they cared about and made them feel good and made them feel emotions. And that's exactly the same in the world. It doesn't matter necessarily, in my opinion, how logical you are when you're communicating with people. If people don't care what you're talking about, if they don't have a resonance with what you're saying, if they don't connect with you as a human being, they'll leave you cold.
Yeah.
And you've got to do that. And so I apply that priority. Connect with my audience, find out what matters to them, and link whatever I'm saying with what matters to them.
Yeah. It's the message and the audience than yourself as priority when it comes to delivering something.
Well, I teach this to people, but I say it again and again to anyone who'll listen, really. When you stand up and speak to an audience, it's not about you. And most people think, of course it's about me. I'm the one standing on the stage. I'm the one that everybody's looking at. Of course it's about me. Everyone's noticing all the mistakes that I make. Everyone's wondering, did you say the right words in the right order? Everyone's saying, are you credible enough to do this? Of course it's all about me. But it's not. When you're speaking on that stage, it's all about the audience. It's all about what matters to them. They are there to get something from what you say. So they're trying to take something away. So you've got to give them something that's of value, whether that's emotional or whether that's logical or whether that's something tangible they can take away and actually action. You've got to give something to them. And some people I've worked with find that the nerves dramatically drop when they realize when they're speaking, it's not about them. It's about the audience. So they stop thinking about themselves and their mistakes and their nerves, and they start thinking, how can I say things that are going to impact this audience? And as soon as you take the locus of focus away from yourself and onto your audience, well, then you're not worrying about your own nerves, so you feel less nervous. Some people say that works for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. I think that sort of answers the next question, but let me see. If you have any advice for someone who are in a leadership position and who often has to deliver something on the spot or impromptu, but struggle to speak up, what advice would you give to them?
Oh, I've got a really simple piece of advice. Find a safe place to make all the mistakes. And I really genuinely mean that. Find a safe place to make all the mistakes. There is not, in my opinion, a shortcut that means you can go from being someone who's nervous about this, maybe with fewer skills in this area, to someone who's really good at this without going through the valley of pain, which involves making all the mistakes. You have to make all the mistakes. I promise you, and I promise your listeners, that I have made pretty much every mistake that somebody can make when speaking to an audience on stage. I'll give you some examples that I have made. I'll be completely honest with you, not proud of this one, I have farted loudly whilst on stage in front of an audience of about 50 people, and I died inside. I wanted the world to swallow me up. Somehow I got through it, got to the end, they even said thank you to me, and I went home. And I drank a glass of wine, and I realised I didn't die that day, and the next day I was going to go and speak to another audience, and I'd move on, and I'd learn my lesson that I maybe wouldn't eat, too many beans the day before I was doing a live presentation. I didn't die. I have nearly knocked myself out on stage in front of an audience. I've pretended I was frustrated and I headbutted something thinking it was soft to make it look like I was frustrated. The thing I headbutted was made of solid concrete, and I was seeing stars in front of an audience of about 100 people. But I had to pretend that didn't happen. And I lost my way completely, going, I've got no idea what I'm talking about for a few seconds. But I survived. I've introduced an MP onto stage in front of 200 people, and I messed their name up and I called them the wrong name. Right? So I'll call them out now and I'll apologise live here. Sarah Tether was an MP. I believe at the time she was Shadow Education Secretary. And this was a public speaking competition for teenagers in the London schools that I was organising. And we had the mayor there, we had the press there, we had teachers, we had parents, we had 200 people in total. And Sarah Tether MP was there to come and give the prizes. And because there were so many teachers in the room, my brain had a complete meltdown. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage to give the prizes today, Sarah Teacher MP. And my brain just completely failed. And she walked up onto the stage. She took the microphone. She stood in front of me. She body blocked me. She just completely shut me out of the whole thing and corrected the audience by saying, it's Sarah Tether, MP. And that's just some of the mistakes I've made. I have made all of the mistakes you can think of, I promise. The only way of making them is finding a safe place and making those mistakes in that safe place and going, well, I won't make that one again. And learning from it and learning from it and learning from it. I've still got plenty more mistakes to make, I'm sure. The case is, don't be afraid of them. Make them and accept that's part of the process.
Drink a glass of wine and move on.
Not too many glasses of wine, but sometimes one to sulk with a glass of wine is acceptable, yeah.
Absolutely love it. Finding a safe space, and I think Toastmasters offers that safe space.
That's exactly it. In fact, actually, let me just very, very quickly. I went to my home club, Kent Speakers, near Maidstone, last night, and there was table topics happening at my club last night. And there was a very new member. This was his first time as a member being asked to do table topics. And he came up to the front, having been asked a question, walked up to the front to give a table topic. And he spoke for about 15 seconds. He had a strong start line. He had a follow-up statement. And then he stood there, went silent, went blank, and then said, do you know what? I can't think of anything else to say. That's all I've got. And he walked back to his chair. And he was clapped back to his chair. He was supported and encouraged. And I had a word with him after the session. And I talked with him. And I asked what happened there. And he just went, I was focusing too much on what I was trying to tell people and worrying too much about getting it right rather than just speaking. And we had a conversation about it. And I shared my process with ethos, logos, pathos that I use with him. I don't know whether that helped him or not. But what he told me and what was most important at the end of it is said, I'm coming back next time to the next meeting and I'm going to ask to be given another table topic then because I want to get better at this. He didn't make a mistake and go, I'm never doing that again. He said, I made a mistake. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to move forward from it. And that is the environment that Toastmasters creates. And I love the fact that my club made it safe enough for him to do that.
Oh, that's so amazing. That got me goosebumps. I think that's a dream for every newcomer to a club to feel that. I remember a few years ago when I did a random table topics at a club where I was just experimenting different clubs in London. My mind got blank. And I was so embarrassed from that I just went back and didn't actually come to Toastmasters for a few years.
Yeah.
And then it was only last year I was like, no, I have to do it. I have to push myself and go for it. And I think I can't believe that it took me that long to recover from that experience. But for someone to say that I'm going to come the next meeting and be asked a table topics and I'm ready to go for it is such a wonderful experience. So,
well, as part of that, I'd just like to give credibility, kudos to Kent Speakers who, there's such key people in that club who've been involved in it in the organisation of that club for such a long time that have created a culture that means that it's got that safe space. But this is a shout out to really everyone who's a member of Toastmasters. If you're an experienced long-term member, it's our responsibility to create a safe space so that those new members who are learning these skills can make mistakes and not feel embarrassed about it and go, do you know what? That's okay. I'm going to learn from it and I'm going to try again. And I'm very happy to do that here because it's a safe space. That's our job to create that environment.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. Great. Chris, we're almost at the end of the podcast. I have a couple of last fun questions.
Sure.
And would love to know. So if you had to choose someone to compete against in a table topics contest, who would it be and why?
Oh my word. Well, that partly depends on whether I want to win the contest or not. So,
I assume you would.
If I want to win the competition, then I want someone who's maybe not so good as me. But if I wanted to have a good time and I wanted to see some incredible people or an incredible person speaking, who would I choose? I'd love to see Tim Minchin do one. I think he would be truly, truly incredible at it as well. Trevor Noah would be an absolutely amazing speaker in that way as well. There's a poet who I haven't heard much from him recently, but I absolutely love his way of communication. A man called Scroobius Pip, or at least that's his his poetry name, Scroobius Pip. I'd definitely love to hear him speak. And Josie Long, the comedian as well. I love the way she uses the English language. I'm confident I would lose to all four of them every single time, but they would be amazing to hear speak. So if if you're asking for names, those people. And if you haven't heard of any of those people, look them up online because they are truly incredible communicators in their way.
Absolutely. We'll love to hear. I think a couple of them I've not heard, so we'll have to check them out. And coming to my last question, so if there is one book or a quote that shaped you as a speaker, what would that be?
Books or quotes that shape me as a speaker? Actually, tell you what, there's a book that I keep on my desk, and I say something jokingly about it. I keep this on my desk for sometimes I tell people about it when I'm running training courses, and I'll hold it up. Okay, and it was this one. It was You Were Born to Speak. Okay, You Were Born to Speak by Richard Newman. And on my bookshelves behind me over there, I have, you can just about see them there, I have about 20 books on public speaking and communication. And of all of the books I have read, this one, You Were Born to Speak by Richard Newman, is by far the best one. If anybody at Toastmasters says, I just want to buy one book that tells me how to be really good at this skill, I'd say there are lots and lots of good books out there, but you know what, if you just want one, that's the one to get. And the thing I jokingly say about this is I recommend this book because it's superb. I'm going to keep recommending it until I write my own one. And at that point, I'm not going to recommend this one anymore. Maybe at some point I'll write my own book. But until that day comes, this is the one I recommend. You Were Born to Speak by Richard Newman.
I love it. Definitely going to read that very soon. Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today in our podcast. Really appreciate all of your thoughts and your insights on quick thinking, especially, which you've shown so beautifully, the different framework of ethos, pathos, and logos, if I'm not gotten wrong, how to connect with your audience when you speak are such important elements of public speaking and impromptu speaking. And I'm sure it would be super helpful for anyone. It has for me and for anyone who is actually hearing this today. So thank you so much for sharing your insights and your frameworks with us. And we look forward to seeing all of the amazing things you continue to do both within and outside Toastmasters. So thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope to see you in our next episode. Until then, keep calm and ditch the nerves.